We light this flame to mark our time together as beautiful and wonderful as are we. I'm going to be trying something new today, and I am very nervous about it. I am not going to read from my printed text. I'm going to be trying it from my iPad. So bear with me. This is a story for all ages, and this story is taken from the second book in a series about the magical land of Xanth. It's written by Piers Anthony, and I recommend them highly unless you don't like puns. In the magical land of Xanth, everyone has one, but only one, magical gift. And it can be something as simple as throwing yellow spots on a wall, or it can be magician caliber magic. That means maybe you could fly. And this story is about finding one such gift. It was darkening now, and the pleasant trees were turning ugly. She ran and tripped over a root that lifted to catch her toe. She skinned her knees in the fall and got dirt in her face, and this was too much. Ivy sat on the path and wailed. After all, she was only 3 years old. Features were intact. Like I said, it had 6 legs. Its scales were pretty metallic green with iridescent highlights. It had a sinuous tail, wings that were too small to let it fly just yet, and a horrendous head full of teeth. The dragon eyed Ivy. It salivated, its tongue slopping around its face, moistening its teeth and making them gleam. A jet of pure white steam issued from its throat. Big creatures were too much for the dragon to tackle. But Ivy was little and succulent, and it was ready to feast. Ivy looked the dragon in the snout, and she clapped her hands with girlish glee. "Oh, goody!" she exclaimed. "A playmate!" The dragon paused. This was not, it suspected, the proper reception accorded its kind by lone humans of any size. Now, the dragon was geared to chase down a terrified and fleeting morsel, to steam it into a tasty half-cooked state, to crunch it into digestible chunks soaked in delicious blood, to burp afterwards and take a pleasant nap. It was also geared to flee anything larger than itself or more dangerous, such as a man with an enchanted sword. Creatures of its own size and ferocity, it was prepared to fight, establishing territorial prerogatives. But the dragon lacked experience and instincts related to friendly receptions. What was the proper response? Ivy walked up to it fearlessly. "My very own pet dragon," she cried. "Green like Mommy's hair. To be my friend and companion, to guard me when I'm afraid." She reached out to pat the ugly snout. What a lovely creature. The dragon was not at all reassured. In fact, it found itself athwart a dilemma. Chase, flee, or fight? None of the signals matched a pattern. No one had ever called it lovely before or patted it on the snout, so it remained stationary, taking no action, and a nervous waft of steam puffed from it. "Nice steam," said Ivy. "You're a steamer, so your name must be Stanley. Stanley Steamer," she repeated. "You're wonderful." Stanley did not know what to do. He was not entirely comfortable, but then again, he was not entirely displeased. What made Ivy's magic especially effective was her talent for enchantment. Whatever traits a person or a creature possessed in her eyes became more powerful, pronounced, durable, and good. When she noted how well her mother grew plants, her mother had grown them even better. When Ivy met the friendly, talkative yak, the creature had become more friendly and helpful. And now Ivy perceived how handsome and nice Stanley Steamer really was. Stanley suffered a moment of disorientation, as is normal for creatures abruptly discovering themselves on a pedestal. He hadn't known his name was Stanley. Certainly he hasn't known he was wonderful. And then the full power of Ivy's magic took over, for it was magician caliber sorcery. And the dragon became exactly what she perceived him to be, her handsome and loyal friend, playmate, and pet. It is now time for the Ari moment. A while ago, our own Dr. Louise posted something on her Facebook page about a sermon that she had given here concerning fat issues. It was a thought-provoking service. I learned a few things and had a few new things to think about, which I really appreciated. But someone on Facebook commented, "Is it common within your tradition to preach on a subject such as body liberation?" That comment to me sounded critical. It pushed one of my buttons and I nearly exploded. Of course we preach on such things. It's a theological issue, you idiot. Fortunately, I calmed down before I replied, and my response was somewhat more measured. Perhaps I should explain. My mother was a highly, highly religious individual. The head of her church, first reader one year, and second reader the next year, back to the first reader next year after that. She became a Christian Science practitioner, worked in the reading room, the whole 9 yards. When I was about 5 years old, I started noticing things in her theology that I did not agree with. I didn't have the words for theological extrapolations, but believe me, they were there. So I commented. She corrected me. I disagreed with her correction, and we were off. Everything has a theological component. I want a candy bar. God wants you to eat healthy. I want a pony. God doesn't want you to have anything more than you can take care of. I want to wear a red shirt. You have a loud personality, and wearing red just means you're shouting for attention. God wants you to be a lady. Mother knew a lot about what God wanted. This has shaped my world view. Because of that experience, I truly do see just about everything as a theological issue. And now we will sing our first hymn. We're going to switch them around. Good morning to all of you. Practical theology. For some Unitarian Universalists, that may be a bit of an oxymoron. We don't all think of ourselves as theologians, and few of us may see theology as being practical. You may not even buy that there is a God. So how can anything be a theological issue for folks who don't believe in God? Well, hang on. There. Okay. I think Unitarian Universalists need to learn how to be translators. We really do have a different worldview from most folks. We think it's okay that we don't all believe the same things. And that's good, because we don't. But some of us see those differences as a bonus. That we're different, that we see or understand things differently that can bring new ideas. However, this does mean we need to be experts at translation. For myself, I speak fluent Christian. In fact, I speak several different dialects of Christianity. And I also speak fluent humanism, paganism, atheism, and I can converse in several others. My home language is probably agnosticism, although I am not an agnostic. Now, what I mean by translation is that we can take an idea from, say, Islam and translate it into something meaningful and relatable for other understandings. Take the Golden Rule. In Islam, it's phrased as, "Do not unto others what you would not have them do unto you." Christianity says, "Do unto others what you would have them do unto you." In Judaism, it's phrased as, "That which is hateful to you, do not to another." Buddhism says, "Treat not others the way you yourself would find hurtful," and so on, with all of the major and most of the minor religions in the world. I would like to propose the idea that a truly worthwhile religious principle can be found in some variation in almost all of the world's religions. Now, back to us being translators. There's all kinds of religious concepts that might be useful. The word theology might be viewed as how one understands the way the universe works. For some folks, the universe is God-centered, and that can take any number of forms. But for others, it's not God-centered because they don't believe in God. Now, just because you don't believe in God doesn't mean you don't have a concept of something that holds the universe together, something that makes it work. In my experience, the vast majority of people who do not believe in God do believe in science. And science is a perfectly valid, motivating force and explains a lot of things in how the universe might work. But I have to admit that the word theology to me also implies that on top of understanding how things work, it implies there's some meaning or value to existence. Our theology, our understanding, influences our values and our ethics, our choices about what is important, and by what standards do we live our lives. And those choices, my friends, are pure applied theology. I cannot think of a subject that does not have a theological component. You chose to be here today. Why? Well, for all sorts of different reasons. Some of us are here for community. We want to build it, maintain it, or even find it. Some of us may be hungering for a new outlook on things and are hoping for a different perspective. Some of us may have been dragged here by people we care about, and we're trying to make them happy. Some of us may be curious. Oh, Christmas, I just lost it. Some of us may be curious about what this place is like and whether or not there's anything here we might find useful. Some of us are here because we have kids, and we're hoping that the Sunday school will rub off some ethics on them, or at least support some of the things that we've been trying to teach them at home. Now, all of those are important reasons. And there's probably 100 other reasons to be here that I haven't thought of. The theological component, well, if you were dragged here by someone that wanted to be here and wanted to share that with you, that means you care about that person enough to make them happy. If you're here because of your kids, you love your kids. If you're here because of community, oh man, there's so many good things you can say about people who value community. And those are all theological choices. In the opening story, For All Ages, I talked about Ivy and her magical gift for seeing things as good and making these qualities even more positive. How I wish that magic were real. By seeing the good in others, that the good would become more real. Oh, I wish that were true. Sadly, it doesn't always work that way. We can see a drug addict, for instance, as a valuable human being that has love and kindness and honesty. But the chances are that that person is not exemplifying those qualities at this particular moment. So the magic of seeing them as good may not always work. But sometimes it does. My brother John lived in New York City for almost all of his adult life. He loved it there. He loved the pace of life. He loved the excitement. He liked the different ethnicities. He loved the food. And he just rejoiced that he got to live in the greatest city in the world. And he did not understand people who did not want to live there. Especially, he did not understand people who were afraid of the crime, because he never experienced it until one day he did. He was on his way home from church late at night, and he took a shortcut through Central Park. Now, you may know that going into Central Park alone at night is not the smartest idea you can have. And sure enough, there was a man with a gun, and he wanted all of John's valuables. But John was a Christian Scientist. He truly believed that every single human being is God's perfect child. And when he saw the gun, a man holding the gun, he saw someone who was not expressing the love and honesty that you expect from God's perfect child. And he started to become very angry, but not for the reason you might suspect. He looked the man in the eyes, and he started to tell him that he, the robber, was God's perfect child, and that he was ruining himself by being dishonest, and he was better than that. That in reality he was an honest person, and all of this nonsense was just making him crazy. He didn't need to be that way. How dare he? John's voice was growing louder as he continued his harangue, and he took a step towards the robber, and the robber didn't know what to do. This was not the way most people react when faced with a gun at the dead of night. The robber was startled and took a step back, confused. John took another step and continued his diatribe. The man was a perfect child of God, and he deserved to be a better person. The robber, frankly, didn't know what to do. This was not the reaction he expected. He hadn't known he was only hurting himself by robbing others. Certainly he hadn't known he was the perfect child of God. Confused, he turned and ran away, leaving John unhurt and unrobbed. Afterwards, John always contended that the robber had seen the light and had undoubtedly changed his ways and was now an honest person. I suspect that what really happened was the robber saw John as crazy. And he didn't know what John would do next, so he thought it might be smart to get out of there real quick. Let me be clear. I do not recommend confronting someone with a gun with the news that they are God's perfect child. But I do see a parallel between John's robber and Ivy's dragon. Both of them were faced with someone who saw them differently than they saw themselves. And that choice to see them as being fundamentally good, despite the apparent difference of reality, seeing that was powerful. Stupid, but powerful. John could have had his head blown off. But in reality, John could have had his head blown off anyway. His choice to confront the robber with his own humanity was risky at best. We all make choices every day, hopefully not so risky. But we choose how to see others, how to see ourselves, and we choose what attitudes we express and what actions we take. And those very choices define what our theology really is. So be it. I want to remind you we do have a talk back after the service. If you wish to participate, Go get your coffee and then come back here and join us. In my not too humble theological opinion, we matter. Each and every one of us matters. You matter, and if your life matters, your choices matter. Your life has meaning based on the choices you make. It does not have meaning based on what happens to you. You can be deathly sick or have rude good health. You can be very poor or very well off. You could have a good education or failed every class. And none of that is important to who you are. What is important is what you have chosen and what you continue to choose every single moment. The way you face life, the way you deal with difficulties, and the way you deal with good stuff too. Those choices are what tell the truth about us. The things you don't choose, your gender, your race, your cultural heritage, and 100 other things that you have no control over you, they influence you. They help make up who you are. But they do not define your theology. Your true theology is defined by your attitudes, by the way you treat others, and by the way you treat yourself. It has been said that we truly have control over only two things: our attitudes and our actions. And both of those are choices. Applied theology is to make choices that reflect our values. And that, my friends, is very practical. So go now and choose to be the best of yourself. So be it.